close the mic, please?
Yes.
Yes, I've seen you on real life. People yeah, that's true. So, thank you. Fine, that's all for the amazing.
Sorry.
So do you spend the good
Yes.
It's like, it's like
Yes.
we need that chair for it. The lady's coming, yeah. Great. Yes, we're coming. I know sometimes children.
That's perfect. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. My name is Petros, and on behalf of the European movement and all the partners of the ShaPE project, I'd like to welcome you to today's discussion. A big thank to Brando, an old friend of the European movement, of the Trade Union Federation, and generally the social partners, for hosting us today. It's always a pleasure to work with you and your team, Brando. They have been remarkable. We have a very interesting morning ahead of us, very rich in discussions. The project that ShaPE is touching upon is crucial, especially in today's world when we are reconsidering our overall social model. The role that the social partners play is crucial. And for that, I think I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with so many interesting people, both from the social partner side, civil society, and of course, academia. Brando, I think the idea is that you will kick off things. So thanks again for hosting us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to open today's presentation of the ShaPE report. Let me begin by thanking Professor Claire Kirkpatrick for coordinating the project, and the European Movement International, particularly Marco Cilento, for contributing in a fundamental way for the organization of this event. My thanks also go to the ShaPE group, to the project partners, the European University Institute, the UCL Louvain, the University of Amsterdam, Innova, the Fondazione di Vittorio, and the European Social Observatory, and to the associate partners, the Jean Monnet Association, the ETUC, the ETUI, and the SGI Europe. And of course, thanks to all the members and participants here today. The ShaPE project arrives at an important moment as Europe faces profound digital, green, demographic, and geopolitical transformations. None of these transitions can succeed without strong social partners, strong trade unions, and strong collective bargaining. I've seen these by working on the present European Social Fund Plus, of which I was one of the rapporteurs, and how important it is to build a stronger role for the social partners. ShaPE's archival research reminds us that social partners are not passive consultees, but active co-drafters of the Maastricht Social Policy Agreement, a legacy that should guide us today. This is especially urgent when recent statements from Washington cast the EU as an enemy to be dismantled. Our response must be a united Europe, capable of defending its social and democratic model. In our trade relations, we need a transatlantic framework that protects Europe's interests. At the same time, we must preserve environmental standards and social rights, and strengthen the role of social partners in shaping industrial and labor policies. We need real simplification to strengthen the enforcement of the rules that protect our citizens and our workers. We do not need the regulation. This is the bridge between the ambition of Mario Draghi's call for scale, investment and technological leadership, and Enrico Letta's vision of a deeper single market. Europe will attract long-term investment if it offers predictable and common labor standards. And this is a direction that is traced also by ShaPE. Our Constitutional Affairs Committee in this Parliament was quite clear in a recent vote on the institutional aspects of the Draghi report, which I followed as rapporteur. We underlined that competitiveness must go hand in hand, and it's impossible without economic, social, and territorial cohesion, with solidarity and reduction of inequalities embedded in EU governance. So the EU pillar of social rights must guide EU decision making, and it should be part in a more concrete way of the institutional framework. ShaPE also highlights other concrete steps needed for a fair transition: the right to disconnect, the fair telework, platform work protections, lifelong learning as a right, and worker-centered AI governance. As rapporteur for the AI Act, I'm convinced that technological change requires strong social dialogue and clear safeguards that protect workers while enabling innovation. And inside the AI Act, we have put important safeguards, in fact, working with many of the stakeholders that are present here to bring a transparency, to bring a knowledge for the social partners, to avoid the lack of information that is the way to exclude the role of the workers' representatives from the social transformation that we see through the disruptive power of artificial intelligence. But we want to do more. We have proposed as a political group, we still propose to have a directive for the use of AI in the workplace that can influence all the areas that couldn't be taken on by the AI Act due to its nature of a product safety regulation. We think that we should not say that we do not need regulation, but rather we need regulation that works, that is functioning. And the role of the social partners on this is extremely important. And in fact, I fully share ShaPE's vision of a new constitutional chain based on peace, social justice, and decent work, because the current institutional architecture is not sufficient. And the Parliament, also thanks to the vote on the report I mentioned earlier, has positioned itself again after the end of the last mandate. So in this new mandate, the Parliament has positioned again in proposing reforms that are crucial also for confronting with the challenges I mentioned, which are targeted treaty changes regarding the inclusion of social justice and decent work, rebalancing Article 119 to place full employment and social progress alongside stability, strengthening the European semester for social convergence, revising Article 151 to establish a real right to transition, and creating a framework for transnational collective bargaining. These are all foundations we need, and we need Europe to be able to decide on these and not just be paralyzed, as sometimes, unfortunately, we see. So the message is clear. Europe's future must be of a social Europe. Competitiveness must advance together with rights, work, collective bargaining, and participation at the heart of the Union. Without that, there is no competitiveness for the European Union and for its economy. So it's now up to us to turn these ideas into concrete action and confront and challenge those that speak a lot about all of this, but actually block every decision when it's the time to, in fact, take the decisions. And that's why we are here together. So thank you. I look forward to our discussions. Due to concurring parliamentary work, I will have to go at some time, but come back and you will see me during the debate. So thank you very much, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you very much, Brando, indeed, for these words. I think you set the tone perfectly. And to continue in that vein, I'll invite Claire, Professor Kilpatrick, the coordinator of the project, to give us her insights on the project. And as you say, there is also interpretation from Italian to English and backwards. So I think it's channel 2, but you can work it out with your system next door. Claire, the floor.
Thanks very much. So, that's working, yeah. So it's, as the principal investigator of this project, it's a big day for me personally and for everyone involved in the project to be here at the European Parliament for this final event. And we're extremely grateful to Brando Benifei for hosting us, and we know it's a lot of work actually to organize an event at the European Parliament. We're extremely grateful as well to European Movement International, Petros and his colleagues for all the work that they did to make this happen so beautifully today. So, you know, it's been 3 years since we had the usual last-minute flurry of phone calls, emails, exchanges to put this funding bid together. To the Commission. Then we heard in June 2023 that we've been successful. We kicked off the project here in Brussels in January 2024. And since then, we've been doing quite a lot of work. We've been meeting online in the academic social and policy experts group. And this year, we're in fact having 4 meetings. One was at the UI in Villa Salviati, which houses the law department where I work, and the historical archives, which have been central to the project as well, where we presented drafts of our work. In September, we were very lucky to go to Bazoches-sur-Guyane. We were hosted by the Association Jean Monnet in a very inspirational stakeholder meeting. And today we're finishing with a bang. We have this morning and this evening the European Social Observatory, Slavina Spasova has organized an after-work event which will have some intellectual content, but will also be followed by some drinks. So I think we also drank some cognac, Jean Monnet cognac in Bazoches. So that seems like a nice way to finish the project. But this morning's a really important moment for us to share and discuss our work with a very highly distinguished group. And I'd like to thank everyone very much for coming along. Now, the project set out to deepen our understanding of the historical evolution of social partners' roles in shaping social Europe. That's the foundations, while also building on those foundations to rethink the future contributions the social partners might make to addressing social challenges. So it's a project in three main parts. It focused, first of all, in digging deeper into the social partners' roles in treaty making. So how do the social partners get involved in treaty making? And for that part of the project, we focused mainly on the decades 1984 to 1994, with a special focus on the making of the Maastricht Treaty and its famous protocol. And as we know, a good part of that was agreed and drafted by the social partners themselves. And it was the EUI that took the lead on that part of the project, with a deep and fruitful collaboration between legal scholars and historians and the historical archives of the EU, and we'll find out a little bit more about that in a moment. Then we know that one important thing of the Maastricht Treaty was that it gave the social partners the capacity to make agreements that then they could ask to be turned into EU law. So, you know, this is over 3 decades ago. So we wondered, how did all that work out? Did it go as we anticipated? If not, why not? So this was kind of a legal and industrial relations puzzle that was investigated by colleagues from Louvain-la-Neuve and from Amsterdam, especially Martin over there, and a group of colleagues from Louvain. The third component of the project is future looking and analyzing, looking at these foundations, looking at law in practice and law in action. How can we use that to analyze how social Europe can respond to new challenges and whether the treaties require modification in order to meet those new challenges? Even if we don't think treaty modification is maybe on the agenda right now, it's always good to be ready and have thought through the changes you might want to make and why you want to make them. That part of the project was led by Sin Nova, partnering with Fondazione di Vittorio. And crucially, we had, and I want to stress this, the importance of the associated partners in the project. So the social partners themselves, SGI Europe and the ETUC, were crucial, especially the archival access and opening new documents that no one had ever seen before. That was really, really important, and especially SGI Europe was crucial in that regard. European Movement International, already we've seen how crucial they've been, not least for getting us here today. And the Association Jean Monnet not just hosted us, but linked us back in our discussions to a foundational period, an earlier foundational period of European integration, and I'll come back to that in a second. And last but not least, ETUI and the European Social Observatory, who throughout the project have given us archival assistance, have said, hold on a second, don't do this, lots of good advice, support, and we're very grateful to them. Now, what is the secret sauce of the project, I think, has been to bring together people who share an interest, so the social partners, the shapers and makers of social Europe, but who come at it from very different places. So they come at it, first of all, with different insights. So historians will say, well, that's not the way to look at this source. Industrial relations, lawyers, sociological insights. But we also had people who came from very different roles, so not just an academic project, and I think that's been really crucial. So the social partners themselves, the associated think tanks, academics, archivists, broader European integration associations, the European institutions. And I think for me, this has really made me, I'm like a legal scholar. It has made me adjust my thinking and my lenses and really look at sources and who makes them and who are the key players in a very, very different way. The other key element is, of course, there's no project without excellent project support. So the project managers who say, you haven't given us that, and where is this? And you've got to go there. So I particularly like to thank Paola Andiriani from Sinnova, Francesca Fazio, and Elisa Cow from the EUI, and many others who have helped. Now, I won't have time today to speak about everything that's been done. We have prepared and drafted treaty modifications we would like to see. We have analysed and evaluated the social partners' lawmaking role over the last 3 decades, thinking, how did it turn out like that? This isn't what we expected. We have carried out an extensive legal historical reconstruction, opening a multitude of relevant archival materials of how the social partners participated in making the Maastricht Treaty, and thereby adjusting many of the existing accounts of how that happened. But what I'm going to do is finish with a little example that you'll find in the digital exhibition that, fingers crossed, you'll see at the networking reception after. We've also prepared the exhibition as a digital catalogue, as a catalogue, printed catalogue, and I think it's come out really nicely. Now, we chose to close the digital exhibition and catalogue with an excerpt from an interview by Emilio Gabaglio. As president of Sinnova, he was a partner in our ShaPE project team. As the ETUC General Secretary from 1991 to 2003, and our archival research showed this even more than we had anticipated, he was really a central protagonist in the making of the Maastricht Treaty. Now, in this interview, which was conducted some time ago, Emilio Gabaglio reminds us that the long history of European integration is a resource that we should keep mining to consider how social Europe should be reshaped to meet new challenges. Taking us back to Jean Monnet, and this is why the going there was a kind of really, I thought, oh yeah, I remember that interview, and we went and looked for it again and included it. So he thinks back to the Monnet period, and he says it's really important to keep looking back and thinking about what was possible in the past. He recalls that the predecessor to the 1957 Treaty of Rome, the European Coal and Steel Treaty, had a much stronger imprint of worker involvement from which the Rome Treaty retreated. And I think as we face new challenges of war, environment and climate, and to democracy inside and outside Europe, the roles the social partners can play in addressing those challenges merits sustained, but also historically informed reflection. And I think that's our main takeaway from our project. Thank you very much.
But just to keep on that, I want to confirm my reputation as a Greek. We always keep the time. Maybe we can go straight to our next panel, and Didier, Mark, and Jacopo can take it from here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I would also like to thank the organizers of this closing event, to all the partners in the project, and to our host, Onorevole Benifei, and the European Movement International. Now, I will be very quick in just introducing the archival aspect in this project, which is in fact the element of the discovery. So discovering the foundations, and it has already been mentioned the role of the archives as places to explore the past in order to get inspiration and to get the ideas and the foundations for ideas for the future. So as Claire said, we concentrated on the period of 84 to 94, more or less, so 10 years of social dialogue in the work package 2. And the Historical Archives of the European Union has taken a key role in this, since we are the official home of EU institutional archives, which means that all the EU institutions transfer their archives to Florence after 30 years for their opening to the public. So after 30 years, EU archives are open to the public and to research. This is not sufficient, and this was one of the key messages also of this project, that the institutional archives are not enough, also since the institutions are not enough to define the social dialogue. So we have to also take into consideration all other types of archives that document European integration, and here the social policies of European Union. So we reached out to the different partners and asked whether they have papers, whether they have archives that could be incorporated into this collection. So we did a networking approach, also in terms of looking backwards, who has relevant papers, who could provide and who could participate. And this is an important aspect that is followed in Florence. We always try to find archives, discover archives that are relevant for all different aspects of European integration. And the social policies, the social dialogue is a key element in that. And so we were very happy about what we found with the different partners involved. Now, to end with, we are reaching a period which is very exciting also in terms of archival knowledge and archival availability. The European Commission has just recently sent the first cabinet of Jacques Delors, so the cabinet, the political archives of Jacques Delors, to Florence, which has been now opened to the public. The other two presidencies will follow shortly. So within early next year, you can study also from the institutional side basically the political archives of the cabinet of Jacques Delors, and this is a very important moment. So we can kind of complete also the archival voyage, and you will find also some elements already present in the catalog that we produced. So it is important to state that the archives plays an important active role, not only an inactive role as a place where people can go and seek knowledge, but also to participate actively in research, in consultation, and in informing the public about the past that inspires the present and the future. So since we have two main elements in our work package, I will now leave it to my colleagues Mark and Jacopo to present on the one side the role of archives in this project, and on the other side to present the exhibition which is available online, but also has seen a paper and a digital production in the catalog that you see in front of you. So thank you very much, and I leave the floor to my colleagues.
Thank you so much, Dieter. So I think we're just waiting quickly for the PowerPoint to show up. Yes, exactly, because we brought you also a PowerPoint with some actually research results that we found out in this project, because Dieter was talking about discovery and what we actually found in the project. And in this little presentation that we'll be doing now, basically what Jacopo will be doing is to present you the archival and historical research outputs of the project, which notably concerns this digital exhibition, which is also targeted specifically at citizens and at making research also available to a general public. And I will briefly talk more about let's say the discovery of what we actually found onto the project and how this can also be used actually to kind of address social dialogue in the different challenges and transitions that we were mentioning before. But just before starting, actually quickly, I've wanted to take a brief moment of pausing and to look at 3 pictures together with you that you can see here quickly on the slides, because I think they're very interesting in terms of actually already showing what social dialogue means and what social dialogue has also meant in the past. So sometimes social dialogue looked like a big summit meeting in the Palais des Monts here in Brussels, together with the different social partner organizations and the European Commission. Sometimes it looked like a protest, this time organized by the ETUC in the 1990s against the unemployment crisis of the 1990s. But also sometimes it looked like a nervous commission president who is reciting a speech for the big summit somewhere in a staircase. I think that's really interesting because it shows us things that we found out, new resources that we discovered, and also the many different phases in which social dialogue is relevant and which social dialogue needs to function. Just to say this briefly before kind of delving quickly in our research results. There we go. So what was the more academic output of our research project? I think the main academic research project of the working package 2 that we were working on was a working paper in which we were investigating the moment from, as Claire Kirkpatrick was saying before, from 1984 to 1994, and the role social partners have played in making the Maastricht Treaty, and also how they came to have this role and how they then also used this role to basically kind of develop social dialogue in the very first years of its existence at the EU level. In this working paper, we look at 3 different actors of this different process, which are the member states. Obviously, they're very relevant to making EU treaties, but not only. And they interacted crucially with the Commission, which is the second actor we're looking at, and also the social partners. The working paper is available online. You could also eventually download it just here if you wanted to. But what was really interesting was that in this project, we found out how these different actors interacted, how it was not only the social partners themselves that made the treaty, but how they were crucially supported by other actors, and how also they kind of got to have this role in connection with the member states who are usually thought to be the ones that actually draft the treaties. Because in 1991, what was happened was that actually on the social policy title, it was the social partners that actually proposed the treaty text that then the member states accepted to come into the treaties. So far to say in this working paper, we are looking at these 3 different actors and their roles and how they interact, and also how individuals within these actors shape this process of treaty making. And just to give you briefly 3 takeaways, there's much more takeaways obviously in this long and very exhaustive working paper, which is very interesting. But just to give you 3 brief takeaways that could also be relevant for the current process and the current transitions that we're living. I think 3 things that kind of stuck out to us, but in terms of discovery, were really interesting in the ways we acceded to new archives. These are actors, concepts, and paths not taken. For example, with actors, one thing that really stuck out to us was, for example, the fact that the joint action for social partners, also this joint contacts among their members, among their representatives, is really important for how social dialogue functions in the European Union, the way to make it actually functional. The same counts also for the support by the Commission to actually be, and the EU institutions to actually be supportive of collective bargaining at the European, but also at the national levels. Then in the second perspective, in terms of concepts, we are also engaged with legal debates that are notably very relevant these days, such as, for example, the debate on the minimum wages directive, in which we could, for example, make a contribution on where this pay exclusion, which was very relevant recently to lawyers, actually came from in the first place. And in as a last point, I also quickly wanted to talk about something that is also quite relevant today still, I think, for thinking about social dialogue more broadly inside Europe, but not only in the European level. I think one big output of these projects are also the paths that have been proposed in the past, but that were not actually taken. And here, for example, in the 1990s, there was a big reflection about what we call also in the working paper an industrial relations space. So not only how would you make accessible social dialogue, collective bargaining at the European level, but how also would this interact with the national levels across Europe. This is something that actually has not then been followed up so much, but it's very relevant, I think, today also for thinking about collective bargaining more broadly. With this, I give it over to Jacopo.
Thank you, Mark. Perfect timing. And hello, everyone. I'm Jacopo Cellini. I work at the UI and the Historical Archives of the European Union. I'm the historian of the group, and I will quickly tell you about the 2 main outputs that we produced where we try to enhance the visibility and valorize this precious archival material that we discovered and collected throughout the project. These outputs, let me just say, are good examples of public history, which is the practice of creating, transmitting, and developing historical knowledge also outside and beyond academia. One of the challenges of historians like myself is how to make historical research accessible to a wider public and useful for citizens. So we tried to achieve this goal via 2 main outputs: an archival collection and a digital exhibition. The first tool, the archival collection, is a little bit more technical in the sense that it's directed to researchers, but also practitioners, but also policymakers interested in the origins and development of social Europe and European integration at large. We created an archival collection hosted on our website of the Historical Archives of the European Union, which includes a wide selection of documents, I think about 250 of them, that can be used as a starting point for further research or to study and deepen the knowledge on some specific aspects of the history of social partners and European institutions in that crucial period of time between the mid-1980s and the mid-1990s. Here in this collection, you can find meeting minutes, you can find papers prepared by the social partners or by the European Commission, for instance, correspondence between social partners, among social partners and between social partners and European institutions, and other types of sources that can give you a first-hand account of how these different actors approached key moments in the social dialogue process, or for instance, in the preparation of the Treaty of Maastricht. In some cases, you can access and see the documents directly when they have been digitized, or you can find for each document a brief abstract and the reference, the archival reference code that can help you to locate these documents in their archival repositories, for instance, in Florence or in Brussels or in Amsterdam, where some of the ETUC papers are held at the International Institute for Social History. So this tool provides an overview of the available archival resources in the field. The second output, let's say, is certainly more attractive visually and takes the form of this digital exhibition that also my colleagues have introduced. We're very proud of this. It's a nice way to visualize what we found out during our research work. You can browse this exhibition digitally on our website, and we also produce this paper catalog that is now in your hands. This has been another attempt at giving value to the primary sources collected in the archives throughout the project, and an attempt, as I was mentioning, to build a more accessible narrative for the general public. So this exhibition addresses how European institutions and social partner organizations discussed and negotiated and shaped the meaning of social Europe, starting with the launch of social dialogue and closing basically with the drafting of the social policy agreement of the Treaty of Maastricht, and then with its first, let's say, interpretation and implementation. The exhibition features not only paper documents, like, for instance, the text of the social policy agreement and the letter signed by the three Secretary Generals of the ETUC, CEP, and UNICE to the President of the Council of the European Communities, Ruud Lubbers. But not only paper documents, and this is a good reminder that archival sources are not only made of paper, but it also features photographs, images, and even oral history interviews, where you can read and listen to the personal recollections of some of the testimonies of the time, like commissions official like Carlo Savoini or Jean de Jambre, and social partners representatives like Emilio Gabaglio, and you can listen to their voices. We're lucky enough, we contemporary historians, that we can even talk to the sources sometimes, and they become historical sources. So let me close again on this. Claire has already mentioned this interview of ETUC former Secretary General Emilio Gabaglio, which we closed the exhibition with. Well, I was the author of that interview now more than 10 years ago. I interviewed Gabaglio for another research project I was conducting on Christian trade unionism. And he was very kind to me. I was a young researcher back then, and he offered a very interesting and sharp recollection of his experience and activity in Italy and Europe. So I'm happy that a little excerpt of this interview found its way in this exhibition, and I think it's also a nice way to preserve and honor his memory. So Thank you.
Thank you. Io parlerò in italiano, approfittando della presenza della traduzione simultanea, per questa seconda parte del nostro incontro e della discussione tra appunto una serie di panelist che rappresentano le istituzioni europee, le parti sociali e il Parlamento europeo tra le istituzioni, quindi Commissione, Parlamento, parti sociali e un partner del progetto che è il professor Martin Koine dell'Università di Amsterdam, che ha partecipato appunto alla stesura di questo lavoro, di questo progetto e delle proposte che ne sono uscite. Questa seconda parte, diciamo, rispettando anche quello che è stato il nostro progetto, dalle radici del dialogo sociale illustrate appunto dagli archivi, dalle ricerche di archivio storiche, è passata ad esaminare l'evoluzione del dialogo sociale nel corso del tempo, in particolare diciamo negli anni passata l'età dell'oro del dialogo sociale, gli anni 90, poi negli anni 2000, negli anni 2010, fino diciamo alle recenti evoluzioni del dialogo sociale. Quindi la questione sul tappeto, diciamo, sulla quale chiediamo ai diversi intervenienti di dire la loro opinione, è qual è lo stato di salute del dialogo sociale in questa fase storica. Fase connotata non solo da quanto già in corso, cioè la doppia transizione digitale e ambientale, ma anche le incertezze determinate dalla situazione geopolitica attuale, che ovviamente stressano moltissimo non solo le istituzioni europee, l'Europa in quanto tale, ma anche poi i rapporti tra parti sociali in relazione alle priorità da dare ad alcuni aspetti del dialogo sociale piuttosto che ad altri. Quindi io ho l'elenco delle persone che debbono intervenire, darei forse la parola per primo al rappresentante della Commissione europea, deputato capo di gabinetto della Commissione europea, il signor Max Ube, per chiedere come appunto immagina l'evolvere del dialogo sociale in questa fase particolarmente critica, particolarmente cruciale, quali sono, diciamo, qual è l'interesse in questo momento della Commissione europea nel rilanciare il dialogo sociale dopo un periodo di stallo, di crisi che ha caratterizzato il decennio trascorso, e in particolare come affrontare la questione, diciamo, di rafforzare il dialogo sociale e il ruolo delle parti sociali in una situazione in cui c'è una crescente sfiducia nei confronti della democrazia, considerando che il dialogo sociale è un pilastro dello Stato di diritto e come tale deve essere preservato proprio per assicurare una genuina rappresentanza degli interessi con riguardo appunto ai temi di capitale e lavoro, e quindi in queste sfide delle doppia transizione e delle ulteriori sfide securitarie che vengono poste in questa fase alle istituzioni europee e alle parti sociali.
Thank you very much, Jaya. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here, to see so many happy faces for the achievement of a big, a very interesting project. I learned already quite a bit, for example, how important good archiving is, how relevant it is to also look back into the history, in particular in times of crisis. We are no doubt in. You just referred to it, the upheavals in geoeconomics, the trade dependencies. Rando spoke about artificial intelligence and its impact on labor. And we see at the moment, of course, a major transformation, in particular of the industrial base in Europe, with all its impact on workers, on companies, but also on the social fabric in Europe. And my big boss, so the vice president, Mrs. Menzato, always says in these times we need social dialogue and strong social partnership really more than ever. That is our starting point when it comes to social dialogue, that I would say guides us, and that is why the Commission, and not only this Commission, looking a bit back now, President Juncker was, of course, also a big champion of social dialogue. But we continue the Commission's, I would argue, strong support for social dialogue in Europe. On the one side, of course, financially. I will not go into details here, but we have this dedicated budget line. And we support also quite substantially by the national social partners through the ESF. I think in the current period it's up to 500 million for the 7 years. So there's strong financial support, but also institutional support for social partners. You know that the Commission organizes meetings of the sectoral social partners. We involve all the, I think it's 88 recognized social partners in policy and in lawmaking, not only in our policy area, but there are more and more now also dedicated hearings of social partners in areas where other commissioners or other services are in charge. We have established also following a recommendation on social dialogue, now social dialogue coordinators in each EG, in all services of the Commission. That is, of course, also a very important angle for us to promote and make aware others of the importance of social partners and social dialogue in the European Union. And last but not least, and most important, because I think it's so unique, is of course the formal consultations of social partners under the treaty provisions, and this opportunity for social partners to come to agreements amongst themselves. As far as I know, but I mean, you are the experts here. This is unique in the world, that social partners can decide to negotiate on a topic, come to an agreement, and this agreement becomes law, becomes binding law. So it's a very powerful instrument. But now, maybe coming a bit to the state of the art, unfortunately, the last agreement dates back to 2009. So it has not been used for many years. We got pretty close 3 years ago on the right to disconnect and telework. Yeah, two years ago, the negotiations failed. So here, I think we would really hope for more successful outcomes. We ourselves, we involve social partners as much as we can. The most recent example is the work on quality jobs. We just spoke before we started here about the adoption last week by the Commission of the Quality Jobs roadmap. At the same time, also the launch of the first phase social partner consultation. But this roadmap has been developed in very close cooperation with social partners. There were meetings at European level, at national level, in all member states, cross-sectoral, in the sectors. It was really a massive exercise. I see Luisa Cabral at the end of this side, who has done really an incredible work in engaging with social partners so closely. So to conclude, I would argue that there's really ample of opportunities for social partners to participate and to get closely involved in EU policy making and lawmaking, as just mentioned. History shows that it has been possible in the past, and we are still trying to make that happen in the future again in this context. I'm also, of course, looking forward to the contributions of the social partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Forse c'è tempo per un secondo giro di domande, forse. Vorrei dare la parola al Again? Okay, it's okay. Okay. Al Juan Fernando López Aguilar, membro del Parlamento Europeo e rappresentante dell'Alleanza Socialisti e Democratici, per porre un po' la stessa questione dal punto di vista appunto di una forza politica nel Parlamento Europeo, come vede in questo momento di fronte alle molteplici sfide, non stiamo a ripetere, oltre alla doppia transizione, ma anche le sfide che appunto questo periodo storico deve affrontare, come rafforzare il ruolo delle parti sociali proprio per rafforzare anche il sentimento di democrazia e di appartenenza all'Unione Europea da parte dei cittadini, e come affrontare le inuguaglianze, le disuguaglianze che appunto attraversano la nostra società, anche la società europea, e quindi quali sono le priorità che il Parlamento Europeo e la vostra forza politica intende sottolineare di fronte a questo tipo di questioni e del ruolo delle parti sociali, come rilanciare il dialogo sociale.
Innanzitutto grazie professoressa Guariello, grazie a tutti e a tutte, buongiorno a tutti e a tutte. Good morning everybody here. I'm very pleased and honored to be given the chance to engage in this gathering about social partners and social Europe, the ShaPE program, the ShaPE project. And of course I thank my colleague Brando Benifei for hosting this conversation this morning. Very busy morning. It happens to be the latest Brussels week in December, so we have a number of committees going on, a number of gatherings, including one of my major field of action and concern, which is the migration and asylum contact group, which is not in good shape. But I mentioned precisely because this social Europe has been not in good shape for much too long. Let's face it. And things are not improving. It's not going any better. On the contrary, the prospect is pretty dark, and I'm absolutely concerned about it. And of course, I am committed to do my best within my field of action. First of all, within my group, which is also S&D, but also in the European Parliament in order to make it better. But it's not looking nice. Sure, you know that, for one thing, many of us here in the European Parliament are absolutely convinced that social Europe is our reason for being here. It's an existential reason for us. It's all about keeping a social balance. That was the idea of the European supranational integration project in the first place. It's about solidarity, it's about cohesion. That's our reason for being. That's our raison d'être. It means that Europe is about intergenerational solidarity, providing opportunities for younger people, but security for older people. It's about social solidarity too. It's about social cohesion too. It's about keeping a balance to make welfare possible with fair fiscal policies, with fair and progressive tax systems. We are to keep a social balance, not leaving larger and larger portions of society behind. That would be absolutely un-European. That was absolutely denial of the European reason for our supranational integration in the first place. And then it's also about certainly regional solidarity too. That is cohesion. But the thing is that all these dimensions of the social Europe have been at stake for much too long. At a certain point of time, surely you know that the Lisbon Treaty entered into force with very strong social clauses. We used to refer to Article 154 to 165, but most importantly, 154 and 155 articles of the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union. And we used to refer to Title 4 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights, which entered into force with the same validity as the treaties. It's solidarity, it's social security, it's social dialogue, it's social stakeholders, it's employers and the workers engaged in a permanent, constructive, fruitful social dialogue, which is protected by EU law, which is binding by member states, binding for member states and for EU institutions. So there are a number of legal clauses that entered into force with the Lisbon Treaty with the same value as the treaties back in 2009. But ever since, we have seen the European Union overcoming a series of critical episodes, getting started with the Great Recession, which was a catastrophe. The management of the Great Recession was extremely antisocial. And many of us stood up, and many of us resisted, and many of us, of course, opposed, very strongly so. But all the same, the relation of forces imposed a terribly antisocial management of the Great Recession, which lasted years and resulted in inequalities in the rise all over the place, and inequalities among member states and inequalities within member states. And of course, it was a major blow for progressives. I am a progressive. I am a Spanish socialist. And of course, take it for granted that many of us opposed, not only on matters of philosophy and political doctrine and political stance, but also for a clear understanding that all that management of the Great Recession was extremely harmful for progressive political choices. To begin with, the progressives that were by then in government. Do you remember Papandreou, missing in action? Socrates, missing in action, and Zapatero. I was minister of Zapatero when he was prime minister. I was his justice minister, missing in action too. They were all defeated in the battlefield because of the terrible management of the Great Recession. But ever since, the social pillar has been at stake. And in the past mandate of the European Parliament, we had this promising investiture vote by President von der Leyen, the first commission of President von der Leyen, which came up with a very ambitious agenda for the previous mandate of the European Parliament, 2019-2024. It was the digital agenda, which was to make an impact on social Europe, for sure. Artificial intelligence, Digital Services Act is changing the landscape of social relations and social dialogue all across Europe. But then the green transition, which is also making an impact on businesses and hence on labor, and then migration and asylum, which, be reassured, it's not alien to the social pillar of Europe. On the contrary, migration and asylum, well handled and well understood, can also be instrumental to bring back social balance, to restore social balance in Europe, considering that Europe is aging to begin with, and still it has a very negative attitude and a very negative look towards migration, as if migration was a threat, or migration was a kind of an incompatible source of problems to the European labor force. Even confronting workers with migrants, which is absolutely unfair, irrational, and it's a false assumption. It's a false assumption. Migrants are not the culprits, are not to be blamed by the worsening conditions of working class workers all across Europe. That is, of course, there is an evidence, but still, it's a fight that we keep fighting on, because it's an ongoing fight, and we are encountering many negative false assumptions on this regard. But then there was also somehow the the impetus to bring social pillar back to life. And we had Nicola Smith as commissioner responsible for the relevant portfolio. Many of us did our best in order to bring social pillar back to life in the past mandate of the European Parliament. But in this mandate of the European Parliament, things have changed for the worse. And actually, it's not a surprise. It's somehow, it was somehow predictable that the landscape would worsen in this regard. And now we see that there's a relation of forces which is not friendly to social dialogue and to social pillar. And we see that the social pillar has been set aside, and the new priorities which are upcoming are somehow threatening in this regard to the social pillar. Security, defense, security, defense, security, and rearm Europe. Certainly, it's not good news for the social pillar. It's not good news for cohesion. It's not good news for solidarity. On the contrary, we see that even if we are willing to compromise on security and rearm Europe, it shouldn't be done in a way which is detrimental to social pillar and social balance. It should be done by new own resources, by new debt, common debt, by the EU in all, but no by putting all resources to these new priorities and again overlooking or forsaking or condemning the social pillar to its erosion. So I just wanted to reassure you that many of us are absolutely engaged with the goals that you have established in the ShaPE project, which is social dialogue, the importance of negotiation and consultation and exchange of information, representatives, employers, workers, I mean, the public sphere, employers and workers in the common dialogue. That is the fulfillment of the clauses which are enshrined in the Charter or the Fundamental Rights, bringing the social pillar back to life, social Europe being really relevant, considering that talking seriously about social Europe means safety from childhood to retirement. We used to say in Spanish, from cradle to the burial place. We used to say that in Spanish, de la cuna a la tumba, safety for all human beings under EU law, quality and well-being, which raise a number of huge challenges considering the situation as it is now, and restoring the balance between low birth rates, aging population, and the sustainability of the system, the sustainability of the social Europe, not forsaking the social Europe. So this pact for European social dialogue, believe me, is a major priority for many of us, which are absolutely committed to keep it in shape, as you have named your project. We have engaged in talks with the Committee of the Regions to bring about deliveries as to the quality jobs roadmap 2. And we have, of course, in mind the number of resolutions that we have adopted in the recent years, including those regarding the establishment and functioning of European work councils, ever since we took this social dimension of Europe so seriously. Okay. So I want I want simply to commit you to commend the commitment you show, and I want you to be reassured that many of us here respect the value of that commitment of yours, of that representation of yours, and are willing to accompany all the way through the coming years, despite the difficulties that I shared just so bluntly with you and so honestly with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Scusate, ora diamo la parola alle parti sociali perché il segretario della Confederazione Europea dei Sindacati, Klaus Michael Stahl, deve partire prima per un impegno. Quindi chiederei al responsabile della Confederazione Europea dei Sindacati, come vede dal punto di vista appunto della Confederazione sindacale la attuale situazione, qual è la posizione del sindacato europeo rispetto alle questioni della just transition e il ruolo del dialogo sociale in questo specifico contesto di fronte alle molteplici sfide che sono state segnalate, in particolare come diciamo il fil rouge di questo lavoro e di questa ricerca riguarda proprio il ruolo del dialogo sociale come fondamento della democrazia. Quindi come pensano le parti sociali, poi la stessa domanda sarà rivolta alla rappresentante delle organizzazioni imprenditoriali SG Europe, come pensa di rafforzare il dialogo sociale proprio per assicurare appunto una coesione sociale più forte nell'attuale situazione. Prego, Klaus.
Thank you very much. And I should say, first of all, it's an honor to be here representing the ETUC at an event like this. I had the privilege to meet Emilio Gabaglio a couple of times, and I remember very well the first time I did so was in the elevator at the ETUC building, and he was, of course, a person larger than life in many ways. I was much younger then at that time, but we went into the elevator, and I didn't know what to say. It was just me and him in the elevator. So I said, "These elevators are functioning very well, aren't they?" I didn't know what to say, and he said, "Yes, indeed, they are." Anyway, I have very warm recollections of Emilio, and I'm sure the people that have interviewed him can echo that as well. And Social Partners has always been a part of the European Union, of the treaties, and all of the change that is happening. And I'm happy that we're here to continue this, because it is dark times. And I think that Bruno made a very good start. And I think it's worth remembering that these are dark times. It is troubling times in so many ways, not only for Europe, but for democracy and politics at large, I would say. So being part of this discussion today, this project is very important, and I believe it's bringing in light and also the opportunity of an open future in a way, because it's been closed for such a long time. So we need to talk about that future and what to get out of it. I think that's an important part of this start. As you know, ETUC have been part of and called for a convention to change the treaty based on Article 48 in the treaty. We think it's time for a social leap. We need to take a social leap. Europe needs to become a greater and more important actor in the social field. And I think that's one of the particular strengths of Europe, and that strength needs to be even more reinforced than it has been. We have called for a social progress protocol, and of course it's about rebalancing trade union rights and economic rights, and I'm particularly on a personal level engaged in this because I was very active in the Swedish trade union movement, in the Laval case, but also in the Viking case and in the Ruffer case, and all these cases. And I read many of Claire's books at that time as a legal advisor. So it's great to be in assembly together with Claire Kilpatrick. Great books. Thank you for those. But the European Union is obviously a very immature legal order when it comes to dealing with the conflict between economic and social rights. It's obvious. And just imagine the fact that you would assess the conflict of rights in a national context based on economical rights, and then ask yourself whether the infringements of these rights on social would be okay. It's just plainly absurd. So there needs to be a leap in that sense. So we have asked for a social progress protocol for a long time. We also believe that there needs to be a change in the qualified majority voting rules. We need to be able to advance our ambitions at European level. but we also need to have a functioning non-regression clause as a safeguard, of course, for those more advanced labor market systems that are out there. So in order to ensure safety, we also need to have, but it's in a more important way to get forward and in this field. We need a stronger role for the social pillar. We need to link it to the treaty objectives. Again, better balance between social and economical. We need a revision of the economic governance packages, and we need a stronger role for the social partners in policy making. And let me then turn a bit into the more pragmatic side, because I've spent my whole adult life in collective bargaining in different forms, in social dialogue. And before that, I was always bargaining with my parents, I guess. So my life has been bargaining since I was born, more or less. So I can tell you a little bit about the challenges, and I think it's important. One cannot talk about social dialogue and social partners as some kind of item that it's plants. They have to be nourished. They have to be watered. They have to be supported, and so on. And it's not easy to bargain, huh? That's for sure. And when we look forward now, we can see that there are very big challenges. I mean, we have the digital challenges, and I think with the digital, we also have the AI challenges now, which is I think it's even larger than we imagined when we started to talk about the twin transitions, as someone used the word. We have the green transition, and the back end there is just plainly wrong, but that's another debate, I think. We have aging populations and so on. Looking at all of these changes, social partners, social dialogue must be a part of these solutions. And I think there's a specific call for the social partners in these days to make ourselves relevant, to be part of the solutions, not to lean out, to look at what's happening, but also to take a specific active interest in that. And I clearly heard the call from Max in that regard as well. We have done things together, trade unions and employers, but also with the Commission, and that is the Social Dialogue Pact. It might not be the most grand thing that we have done throughout the history of social dialogue, but it is a very important step of bringing social dialogue back on track, back towards being an efficient actor again. And I could talk a lot about the different parts of it, but I'm not going to do that right now. I think that, as I said, that social dialogue must make a difference. We have to make sure that we get real change through social dialogue, and that's our responsibility, but it's also the responsibility of the Commission. I'm very happy to have Luisa here as well. She's been a core component in making, I was going to say social dialogue great, but I'll stop there. But I want to thank the participants of the ShaPE project for bringing in this light, and we're very much looking forward to continue to work with all of the participants. We look forward to the follow-up, and you can always count on us to be active supporters of this work. Thank you very much.
Grazie Klaus Michael. Passerei la parola a Valeria Ronzitti, segretaria generale di SGI Europe, per chiederle appunto quanto ritiene che appunto i servizi pubblici essenziali siano coinvolti effettivamente nel dialogo sociale, quali siano le priorità che appunto per l'organizzazione che rappresenta in questo momento siano in testa, diciamo, alle preoccupazioni della sua organizzazione, e quanto ritiene efficace ed efficiente il dialogo instaurato con le parti sindacali. Prego.
Grazie mille professoressa, grazie dell'invito. Come partner di questo progetto è un piacere essere qui alla fase finale e aver visto anche un sacco di belle foto dei nostri archivi, insomma un lavoro prezioso. I will switch to English, and I'm happy, Professor Guariello, that you didn't follow the written order of intervention, because this gives me a lot of room for reaction to previous intervention. So I will answer your question, but also react very much to what I heard until now. Not that this is a surprise, and in a way it confirmed and reinforced what I wanted to say even before hearing colleagues from the trade unions, but also European Commission, European Parliament. And this is something that is a bit maybe different from what we have heard until now, even if Max in a way said it from the institutional point of view, from a social partner point of view. And here I'm not playing the employer trade union, the social partner point of view. I think it would not be correct to say that social partners today do not have a space. What is lacking is not the space. What is lacking is our political will to use this space. And this is very different. So before we even think at treaty changes, there is a huge, massive space that we need to occupy again. I mean, it's quite deceiving to think that we are approaching the 17th year since we have been able to sign up an agreement that then was transposed into a directive. So I think and hope that 2026 will change this course. You know, as a younger being, now I'm not young anymore, but when I arrived into the scene of social dialogue, I was feeling the frustration of, you know, not being up to the level of the golden age, the moment where there was even no question. I mean, the European Commission was launching a two-stage consultation, and for social partners, despite the difficulties, was quite natural to think, okay, we are going to negotiate because we have this privilege from the treaty. The problem is that we are not using this space since a too long time. And maybe, and this is also due to the fact that we are living in a different world. I mean, it's not maybe. So there has been a moment where I stopped being frustrated, but I realized that the challenges that we as social partners face today were not the challenges that my colleagues in ShaPE and UNISA and ETUC were facing, because there, in a way, the picture was easier. The treaty is clear and give us a clear remit of action that is very much linked to our core competencies. Then since the Juncker Commission, we have been allowed to go beyond these competencies, because since Juncker arrived, he understood that there was a political advantage to involve us also in issues that were beyond the classic industrial relations sphere. We were consulted on the Juncker plan, we started to be consulted on the energy union, and we have been associated to something that has become very much the infrastructure of our field of action, which is the European semester. Before we didn't have this the European semester, we were not involved in that. So we have been expanding our action beyond purely social. We have been entering the economic governance. So the infrastructure we have to deal with is much more challenging. Are we using this at our full potential? No. So my message is, of course, is always very important to have an external view, also an academic view, what could be done, how the treaty could even improve the action. But before going there, we need to take up our responsibility and use this at our full speed. As Michael mentioned, the path for social dialogue, there are many things there that give us, you know, a hook to go further. maybe I'm mistaken. I think I haven't heard reference yet to the quality jobs roadmap, which is not only a roadmap, we are going to be consulted on an act. So there too is our chance to say, okay, we go back to full power and we take it up ourselves. And then there are things where this broader remit that you have been given is not used at its full potential because not all part of the Commission follow this. So this is the critical part, because I'm not here to, defend the European Commission and say, no, they gave us full space. The space on paper is there, but there are some fields where this is not functioning, and Max is already aware because I made this remark already to his boss. The implementation dialogues, which are the part where each commissioner now has the duty to involve the social partners to check the implementation of their own files, are not working. Why? Because not all part of the college thinks that social partners are a player that needs to be consulted, not officially, Article 33 and 44, 53 and 54, but politically. And in the recommendation on strengthening social dialogue and in the pact, there is an obligation. We need to be involved in the implementation dialogue. This is not happening, but we know that there is the part of the Commission allocated to us, EVP Minsato and her team, that are trying to, make their colleagues understand they need to be there, is written, and they need to be involved. So there is also, of course, a cultural shift that needs to happen in all parts of the Commission to avoid that, as our representative from S&D was saying. There is a monolithic agenda on simplification that for some is the regulation, defense and security. You can do things differently. You can speak about the employment potential of defense. There are many things you can treat things, and we can be part of all this discussion. So to conclude, no need for treaty changes before we need to use the full potential, and we count on the EVP for social policies to make the full college aware about the fact that social partners need to be involved in all fields where there is a labor repercussion, and this is virtually everywhere.
Grazie. Do la parola adesso alla deputata del Parlamento europeo del gruppo dei Verdi, Catherine Langisch-Piepen, scusandomi per non avergliela dato prima per le urgenze di altri interventori, e chiedo a lei appunto come vede dal punto di vista del gruppo dei Verdi la questione dell'aumento delle disuguaglianze, le sfide della transizione verde soprattutto e digitale, e appunto il ruolo che nell'anticipazione dei cambiamenti possono svolgere le parti sociali e il dialogo sociale. Prego, Catherine.
Good. Yeah, thanks for giving me the floor, and thanks for having me here. Mille grazie to my colleague, Brando. Are we doing enough? My previous speaker, my MEP colleague, already said that social justice, social injustice is not the big topic amongst us. It's clear, but when we listen to the parliament, other groups, we are talking about competitiveness and defense, two very big topics, nothing to say against, but if we are in a social injustice society, when we are, as you already mentioned, Mr. Stahl, we are an aging society. So we need workers, we need people from outside, and we have an human rights Europe, and not really future orientated. That is the fact, the situation we are talking about. And here I would say, yeah, the current state of social dialogue is there, and in the ample committee is very important to us. And it's a very important topic, but it's not sufficient. And here, as I said, we have structural shifts, we have the just transition, climate change, even if loud voices ignore it and say, oh, that is green propaganda, say the climate change doesn't care about propaganda. Climate change is there with the Greens or without the Greens. Like it or not, that's the reality. And here, of course, and the Greens, you asked especially for what is our party doing. We, from Germany and from the German Greens, but from the other Greens as well, we have a good contact when it comes to social dialogue and good contact with the trade unions. It's very important when we're talking about just transition for the workers. Northern Westphalia is the industrial area in Germany, Dortmund, Bochum, all the industrial cities where people already faced a change, lost jobs. And when you walk or drive through the cities, you see, oh, there is a special story and identification with coal and with the companies in the past. So ShaPE is finding show a clear shrinking of space for meaningful social dialogue, yeah. While social partners once co-shaped treaty provisions, today Commission practice is inconsistent in following up on agreements. Some negotiated agreements were turned into directives. Yes, parental leave, minimum wage was mentioned, and the court, thanks God to the court, agreed on what the parliament decided. Minimum wage is a European competence. It's not only member states, and that is a huge sign. Imagine the court would have said, no, it isn't. Then would be a big, big rollback for our social justice fight. Others were ignored or blocked, and that is still a fight. And that undermines trust, especially when workers see, as I said, decisions affecting their lives, biographies, life stories, family stories. The feeling of being unheard contributes to declining democratic trust. So the far right utilize people and they try to divide us. And without the migrants, you would have a better job. No, without the migrants, we would have no jobs, or we would have an economic problem. We need people, we need workers, not only from a workers' perspective, labor rights perspective, it is, of course, from a human rights perspective. So we are, please go away, Europe, and not feel welcome when we have no apartments, bad schools, bad education system. Can I bring my partner with? Yes or no? How is the educational system for my kids? If the offer is not that good, why should I work or get a job or accept a job in Europe? So what is so attractive to work in Germany and France and wherever for company ABC? So we must change our mindset to say, I want something from you and not vice versa. That is a situation that we are on a very, in Germany, we say high horse. We are sitting on a very high seat and say, you can be happy to work in Europe. No, we can be happy that they come to Europe. That is the mindset, I would say. A stronger, more predictable system, social dialogue is essential for achieving, as I said, fair worker-centered transitions. And ultimately, people must be part of the change. If I'm not part of the transformation, then if you don't care about me, why, and I don't play a role, why should I vote for you from an MEP perspective, or join you, or support you? It's in all our interests to be very, very reliable and transparent when it comes to cooperation. And also the point of contact between people, social partners, as said here, is very important. What percentage of the population even is involved with the social partners? How attractive are our social partners for the young people especially? Why should I join when I'm 16, 17, a trade union or a political party. We're only old gray people. How sexy are we? How interesting is our work? The teenagers are on TikTok, like it or not, and they are not in our evening meetings. We all know how the structure is, and it's for teenagers not really attractive, but we need you because we don't have that much of them. So there is a social dialogue. Commission is doing something, but here we must push the Commission from a Parliament side to say it's in all our interest that we have a fair labor situation, a just transition where people are on board or felt that they are on board. And without that, I have a more or less not that positive perspective. So we are on the right track and we must push against our social justice enemies, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And ora l'ultimo interveniente della mattina è il professor Martin Koene, che ha fatto parte del gruppo di ricerca e appunto nel gruppo di ricerca si è occupato di quella periodo storico del dialogo sociale in cui non è stato molto fruttuoso e quindi ha evidenziato quali sono i limiti del dialogo sociale, delle parti sociali, per cui chiediamo a lui appunto qual è un po' la sua prognosi per un effettivo rilancio del dialogo sociale e per un ruolo importante delle rappresentanze del lavoro e delle imprese all'interno dell'Unione Europea e anche in relazione, poi passiamo magari la parola per chiudere a Brando Benifei che ci sta ospitando, quale vede come priorità del progetto che abbiamo cercato di costruire di riforma del trattato e per un rafforzamento della dimensione sociale. Martin.
Thank you very much. So I'll say a few words on the social dialogue issue and on the lawmaking capacity of the social partners, which seen from the position of 1991, 1992 has been very disappointing, right? We have these three examples of law by the intersectoral social partners, a few by sectoral social partners, but all in all, it's not very much. And why is this the case? I think I was very happy to hear the talk of Valeria Ronzetti, because we look historically, one of the reasons why we have so few agreements there is, of course, that often the employers are not so much interested in this. They often do not want more social legislation. They don't want to be involved in creating social legislation, and they don't want to, in that sense, play their historical part, as you call it, and they don't want to occupy that space. So I'm very happy to hear from you that you were much more positive. And
I need to react to this. I was speaking for both sides, because the lack of will is on both sides at the moment. Just to be clear, it's not only on the employees.
I'll take that from you. Still, I was very happy to hear you. And also Klaus Michael, who left by now, but I think that the new agreements may come in the future. If the social partners really manage to get a sort of a better working relationship again. I think there's also a role for the Commission here. The Commission is doing a lot to promote social dialogue, and I think that's very much appreciated, basically since Juncker. In that sense, the attitude and the discourse of the Commission is much more positive. At the same time, when we talk about this legislative capacity of the social partners, the Commission did indeed change its position on the do we automatically or not automatically translate these agreements into law, and it has put up a lot of sort of conditions by now, like we will check legality, we will check representativeness, we will check the appropriateness of agreements. And with that, I think it has reduced the certainty of the social partners that it's really worthwhile doing all the difficult negotiations to get to an agreement. Second, let me say something about the proposals of ShaPE for the treaty reforms, because we haven't said much of that yet. Have we all, I think Claire already said this, we are not under the illusion that the treaty will be changed tomorrow, but we do think that it's very important that we start a discussion on that. And to me, then the two most important proposals that we have in the ShaPE documents is really on the rebalancing of the mission of the EU. And the one proposal we have is to change Article 3 of the Treaty of the European Union on the mission of the EU. However, the proposal includes social justice, well-being, social progress, human dignity, etc., in life and in the workplace. In the mission of the EU. I think that's very important. Secondly, the proposal to include in Article 151 of the treaty, the TFEU, of a social progress protocol. And this has been proposed earlier by the European Parliament, by the Conference on the Future of Europe, and by the ETUC originally, I guess. And here, I think that could be a very important instrument to redress the constitutional imbalances that we find in the treaty. And to make sure that social and workers' rights take precedence over economic freedoms. Now, if we would make such changes to the treaty, I think, first of all, it can increase the legitimacy of the European Union by showing that it's a union of the people and not a union of capital. I think it can overcome some of the Euroscepticism that we see. It can reduce some of the political extremism and populism that successfully is using the EU as its favorite scapegoat to make its point and to get its votes. It can introduce, as was said before, more democracy in the functioning of the European Union. And finally, I think, and this could be an interesting point where employers and unions can find each other better in the future. I think it could also be a point where, as Europe, we put our money where our mouth is. We've been repeating for many years that good social policy is good economic policy, that high social standards should be the basis for innovation and productivity. I think with these kind of changes to the treaty, we can actually play that game in that way, and I think it could be beneficial for all. So, thank you very much.
Allora, dopo questo giro di tavolo, darei la parola conclusivamente all'onorevole Brando Benifei, che ci ha gentilmente ospitato. Ringraziamo appunto per l'organizzazione di questo evento e anche appunto per avere un po' la sua reazione a questo progetto ShaPE.
Yes, thank you very much. In fact, I think it's very important that in this moment when the European Union is talking a lot about other things, to be frank, the agenda is full of violent fights around environmental legislation, around the geopolitical tensions and, difficult relations with other geopolitical actors. And with decisions around EU sovereignty and EU competitiveness. To be frank, we risk seeing the social agenda and its link with the institutional framework and the role of the social partners, which are not the generic civil society. They are a specific series of actors in our system. It's at risk of disappearing completely from our debate and become just an episode of our discussion. I see it because I was a member of Ample Committee, the committee more involved on the social and employment affairs, including the role of social partners, for more than 10 years. And I have been so quite able to see the evolution of the discussion. When I became a member of Ample in 2014, we had a different situation. And in fact, in the last mandate, we have seen, I would say, some important advancements that we have to defend now with the Platform Work Directive and the choices of bringing more role of the social partners into the work. I see people here that have been with me in the European Conference on the Future of Europe, where this topic was one of the strains of the discussion and of the work. Now I see this being conflated and reduced a lot. And so it's extremely important that we build with this kind of projects that also look at where we were, where we are, where we are going, strong alliances of different subjects to continue the work around these topics, to build when we say capacity building, and we are ready so to confront with the discussions on the European budget, on the future of the institutional framework, and our views on how we can build a competitive Europe that doesn't renounce to its social model. So I think this was extremely timely as a debate and as a project to be presented here. I was honored to have worked together with my team. I want to thank especially Andrea and Samuele and Gianmarco of my team to having worked with all your teams. And I want to thank, if I may, Petros, that has been crucial altogether with all the other people that have spoken and that I also mentioned in my first intervention. And so thank you, and let's continue working together. And now let's enjoy a little chat and drink at the Gran Café Spinelli. So with the important name that we should not forget. Thank you very much.
Please gather in front of the room. We need to be very quick exiting because we are already in the time slot of another meeting. Thank you very much.
Stava meglio quando si stava